Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Black Health Trust. We're so happy that you chose to spend some time with us, and we are looking forward to a very invigorating discussion led by our guest, Bishop Noel Jones. Without further ado, I will turn it over to our founder, Dr. Randall Maxey.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Neighbor Stevens and Dr. Hines and our special guest, Bishop Noel Jones. Our other co-moderator, Dr. Ivan Walks, will not be with us this morning. His mother had a medical issue this morning in Atlanta, and we talked and prayed a few moments ago, so we'll wish him well and make sure our prayers go up for him. Our special guest has been a friend of mine for a number of years. He's a highly respected pastor, and he's going to speak on the healing power of faith. He addressed the Black doctors in Los Angeles a few years ago when we had experienced a high death rate among our practicing physicians. And he talked about how we had to walk in the order of the universe of the Lord. So Bishop is the senior pastor of the City of Refuge Church located in San Pedro. And they have a membership of over 20,000 people. And I've been fortunate enough to speak at that church a number of times. He's a graduate of Anon Bible College. He's the senior pastor and a bishop of the Apostolic Church. And Bishop, we welcome you. We know we've been through a lot with the pandemic and with all the health disparities we have. And we'd love to have your thoughts on the power of prayer and the power of faith. Thank you very much, Bishop, for joining us.
Bishop Dr. Mann, thank you for inviting me and for the work that you're doing, not only among doctors, but among us lay people who need that kind of attention from a medical point of view, now from a psychological point of view. I would like to begin by saying that in many of our service, we have a proclivity, a penchant to ignore the things that we need. And one of the things that I specialize in particularly is, since I'm a minister of the gospel, is the whole issue of prayer, the whole issue of hope, and very definitely faith. Now, from a theological point of view, faith is made up of hope, and hope, of course, becomes the workhorse as it relates to what faith is all about, because the Bible defines faith as the substance, the hypostasis of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The component here is that if a person has faith, then they have to have hope, and hope might just simply say is expectation. You wouldn't go to the doctor if you didn't have faith, and obviously you had expectation that something in that room would work towards your healing. And much of one's attitude and much of one's belief system has a lot to do with the outcome of their physical situation. Because if I believe what the doctor has diagnosed, if I believe what he has prescribed, then if I believe it, I will do my best to comport to what he says. I will take the medicine like I should. I will not be delinquent in those things that are necessary to improve my health, but it all begins with what I believe. But there is a problem for people who are in church and people who claim to be spiritual and claim to be Christian. And that is oftentimes we fail to understand that the God of the natural is the God of the supernatural and reverse. The Christian or the person of faith oftentimes believe in an ontological, mystical kind of a relationship with their healing based on their relationship with God. And so they think that simply by believing that God will heal me, I can bypass the medical advice and bypass the prescribed medicine, bypass those things that operate within the medical technology or the medical science. The problem is that many people who talk about faith and exempt the fact that the God of the natural is the God of the supernatural. Let me put another way. The meteorological system says that it's going to rain tomorrow. And because I have faith and I believe God and I believe I have a relationship with God, I want to have a picnic tomorrow. So what I want to do is pray that God overrides the meteorological systems and we don't have any rain. That's not going to happen, because unless it's going to be for the benefit of God, he's certainly not going to override his whole system because you have faith in him. Why? Because he is the one who prescribes the necessary conditions for the individual to declare that it will rain tomorrow. He has to go on what God is faithful in to be able to make that prediction based on his calculation of the science and the physics that God put in place. I say that because I think it's important for us to realize that 1,000 times out of 1,000, if you step off a 10-story building because of gravity, of the science of gravity, because of the way your weight, wind velocity may be up or may not be up, you are going to hit the ground. And you're going to hit the ground or not hit the ground based on some scientific things that are significantly a part of what makes gravity gravity, what makes you fall from the top of the building 9 times out of 10, no, 100 times out of 100, 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000, you're going to hit the ground, because unless the conditions are different, some anomaly, you might get away from it. It's important to understand that if I have faith and I'm praying, that I pray within the concept of having done everything the way it should have been done, prescribed by a technology that understands the science that was created by God. And after I have done that, and if I'm not getting any results, or while I'm doing that, I'm praying, because ultimately, whether by natural scientific methods or by a supernatural move of God, it is still God doing the healing. If God was not consistent in science, then a boat would not sail, a plane could not fly, and medical technology would be totally insignificant. It's not happenstance. It's a matter of fact that God of the natural is the God of the supernatural. So my word to everyone who believes in faith healing, that your faith is also grounded in the laws that make a doctor able to say to you, you have this problem, here is a prescription, you follow this prescription, and we look for benefits. Now, do people make mistakes? Do mistakes happen? Yes. Do we have misdiagnosis? Yes. Do we have misprescriptions, or do we prescribe medicine that may be too strong or may not be applicable? Yes. Now, here is my prayer. My prayer is that the doctor I have and the work that he does is of such that I can expect to be in relationship with him as I pray to God. So my prayer to God is, Lord, lead me to the right doctor. Let him operate in the right manner. Let him be in the right frame of mind. And this makes me and helps me to get better with spirituality and medicine linked together. Now, to talk to physicians, I would say it's important for us to realize that many times we need to heal ourselves. We get so carried away and so concerned about the benefit and welfare of others that we oftentimes forget our own welfare and our own benefit. Let me put another way. A woodcutter does not lose time when he stops to sharpen his axe. We can't keep, and I'm in the service business, we can't keep chopping with a dull axe. And oftentimes I have worked so diligently. I'm here with Bishop Jakes, and I've flown all over the world. And I wouldn't take time out for myself. I wouldn't take time out to improve my lot. So what I would do is, because I'm working all the time, meeting everybody's demands, traveling all over the place, when I had a little time, I would take the time and get something to drink. I would take the time and just do something foolish, like have too much to drink, get away from what I'm dealing with for a moment. Next thing you know, I've got a drinking habit, simply because I wouldn't take the time I needed to replenish myself. I took the little time that I would take and do something that would dull my senses of my hard work. And then before you know it, I've got some kind of habit. I'm drinking on the plane. I'm drinking in the hotels after I get finished preaching. And really what I need is some time off. So I'm saying to physicians who have faith in the medical technology, who understand that you need time off and you need time to yourself, you need time to recover, that you cannot allow yourself to serve until you break down to the point where you're taking these little respites, and to some people it might even be indulging in drugs like cocaine and other things that just happen to break you down, because you will not take that quality time off to sharpen your axe to get back to work properly. So when we talk about faith in God and faith in the human resource and faith in the technology that God has allowed to exist because of his consistency in nature, then when we put it all together, it not only works for the people we serve, but it works for us also, because we can allow things to sneak upon us in serving to the point where we're not capable of serving to optimum proportion, because we have allowed not following the rules to become a part of our own demise. And I would like to project that to you, not only for the people who come to us to believe in us and believe that God has appointed us and believe that God has allowed the science to bring about their healing, and their prayer, of course, should be that we thank God for the medical technology. We thank God for the people who study, the people who follow up and consistently improve their skills, and the faith that they have in what God has done, in what God has given them and their ability. But also, on the converse, for us to be able to understand the need to take time off, and the need not to be needed to the point where we can no longer serve on the level that we should serve, because we've allowed ourselves to drift into certain habits and certain things that have impeded our ability to serve, because we wouldn't take time out to sharpen our axe. I hope I didn't talk too fast, and I hope I made some sense.
You made a lot of sense, Bishop. A lot of sense. So I know that there are a lot of people, our audience is not only physicians, but we have lay people on the line. In fact, our audience is mostly lay people. And I mentioned at the beginning of the talk that one of our key moderators, his mother, who I love dearly, I think she's, Dr. Hines, how old does Mother Walks? I think she's close to 90 or.
I was about to say upper age. I was going to say 88, 89 is where, yeah, I think.
And she's a strong Christian lady. And she had an event a short while ago. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know that we have faith and we want to put prayer in the fact. So how do we best use, as professionals and as lay people, how do we best use faith? I'm told that faith without works is dead. And you implied that people expect if they jump off a building that God will save them, but we have to not do foolish things. How would you tell us to use our faith and our prayer in a rational way?
I think Oral Roberts said it best. Oral Roberts, of course, now Oral Roberts University, a proponent of the Christian faith to an extraordinary level. I think he said it best. He said, you trust what God has given in medical technology and medical science. You trust because you know that it is of God. And you pray while you take your medicine. You pray. Why? Because if this is the proper diagnosis and this is the solution to that diagnosis, then you give God praise for having found out exactly what is wrong with you. And we're not going to stop you from praying because it's not either or. It's both of them operating together, because in praying and seeking God and believing God for your healing while you're taking the medicine, it gives your attitude and it gives you the psychological capacity and the spiritual capacity for the medicine to work on your behalf, because not only are you imbibing it physically, but you're believing psychologically that this is going to make you better. So you will help the process by your mental state based on your relationship with God and based on your believing that God is operating through the process. If you don't believe God is operating through the process and you claim to be a believer, then you're not going to follow the rules. You're not going to have the works that go with you believing that this is the method by which God is going to help you. And if that doesn't work, then you seek a supernatural solution, but the supernatural has to be within the parameters of the natural. Where the doctor failed, God will pick up. That's the belief. That's how you combine prayer with the medical technology, because you understand that God is the author of both.
Dr. Neighbor Stevens, the daughter of a pastor and the famous Neighbor family.
Well, I thank you. I've been contemplating the words that we have heard, because I am trying to understand how people, and I'm going to be specific and talk about the people in this country, although I am fully aware that a lot of what I'm about to address is prevalent everywhere else. But I want to talk specifically about the US. How do we address what appears to me to be a population that is drifting and without any kind of substantial anchors, so that they get swept up easily in all kinds of nonsense? And I would say that this is true whether we're talking about medical issues, whether we're talking about political issues, if we're talking about lifestyle choices, specifically those who get off on these tangents that if they eat only this something, it's going to do X or do Y. I mean, it's just baffling to me at this point in time how so many people can get off on the wrong foot. And what do we do to try to mitigate this and lessen it? I won't expect that we'll eliminate it, but in some way get it under control.
If I may respond to that, the first question I would ask you is, what contributed to your ability to investigate, to diagnose, and discover that there is a solid way of living where you don't just pick up anything and run with it. What would you say was the cause of you being so stable, or your generation being so stable, so that you wouldn't swallow anything? And I'm going to make it rhetorical so that I can answer. The reason why your generation and my generation was so solid and appraising and analyzing in those things that we would then follow was because we had guidance and direction from a group of people who were our seniors. We cannot blame the generation for jumping and grasping at anything without any kind of intellectual investigation, with any kind of cognitive involvement, when we have failed them because we have supported and we have endorsed a group of leaders from the top echelons of our country who don't believe in the truth and don't believe in anything scholastic or scientific, from the geopolitical system, from the ecological systems, from the educational systems. We have a bunch of folk who lead, who throw out anything, and then we expect the kids to be analytical in an environment where truth does not matter. So we are partially responsible, or in a great way responsible, for giving support to liars, to hypocrites, to people who don't believe in science, people don't believe in law, people don't believe in anything that is regimented, regulated, anything that needs intellectual investigation and cognitive involvement. That's why they are like that. So in order to reverse it, we have got to first take away our support from all of these people who don't believe in education, don't believe in the historical truth, don't believe in scientific truth, don't believe in scientific truth to the point where people don't believe in global warming. And I'm dealing in a case now, I'm in a situation here where they're teaching kids, and I'm putting a bunch of money into educating kids. And I said to them, what are we educating them for? They won't have a world if we don't do something about global warming and the ecological systems. But then our leaders, the people who are in charge, are the reason these kids can grasp at anything, because nobody wants the truth in anything today. So in order for us to reverse that, first of all, we got to stop backing these folk who don't believe in telling the truth about anything. That's first. And then we have to influx truth. We have to insist on education in every manner. And we have to go back to causing people to analyze and deal with the situations of life in a truthful and a veracious way. If we don't do that, we're doomed.
Thank you. Dr. Hines?
Well, thank you so much for all of your comments and for joining us today. There's all the questions I have, you keep answering them kind of because they're there, but I will also, and I guess my question kind of piggybacks off of what you just commented on, where as it relates to the people who are receiving messages in their churches about not using medicines, and I'll speak in the context of COVID specifically. There are plenty of folks from their pastors that were being guided by their spiritual leaders to not engage in the healthcare system and things of that nature. How do you talk to those people who believe, and it kind of gets at what you're saying about people lacking critical thinking skills, but how do you talk to those people who believe that they're on the right path?
One of the things that I think is important is that we need to bring up things that we don't want to talk about in order to shame people into understanding that what you're dealing with is junk. Do you know how many pastors I have had to bury who died stupidly because they didn't believe in the vaccine? It was going to be the mark of the beast. It was going to be some kind of weird thing that they concocted because they misunderstood scripture. Another great problem is that you have a lot of folks in the pulpit who have no biblical education, have no spiritual connection. They just decided that they were going to start a church. Well, what can I do? Well, do a McDonald's. No, do Safeway. No, I think I'll start a church. One of the problems is that the people are in the business of church, the economics of church, but they're not in the veracity, the truth that surrounds church, and they have no background. The church has been one of the greatest misinformation centers for Black people in America, because people gravitate towards the exciting, the ambiance of the environment, the emotionalism, but not that part that is intellectually significant. In other words, what people do is they put their minds outside of the building when they come in, and they are easily and gullibly swallowed. And this is the problem. The next problem that relates to that is it now has become a center of money making and the business of church, money. And money is going, the love of money, not having money, the love of money is going to destroy our democracy. It's going to destroy all systems of education. It's going to destroy people's trust in science because they're uneducated. And I think we just need, from this body of people that are listening today, we need to flood our neighborhood with the facts, showing how many of these people died who didn't believe it, and go from there and hope for the best.
So I have a question, a little bit controversial, and so whether I offend people or not, this whole cycle of politics seems want to be backed by people that call themselves evangelical, and I'm not sure I know what that means. But being someone who studies the Bible himself, and where we look out for less fortunate than us, where we look out for people who are poor, have different difficulties, it seems like evangelicals have bought into something that is non-Christian. They want to get rid of Medicare. They want to put work requirements. They want to put no bottom level on income. They have policies that want to hurt people. That seems to me not to be Christian-like. That seems to be not like Christ. Can evangelicals, in your opinion, be true Christians?
No, absolutely not. You see, what you've got to understand in America now is that the people in power want to reverse the democratic principles into the feudal system. The evangelicals are akin to, and I liken them to, the Catholic Church in the European culture, where the Catholic Church was either dancing with the King of France or the King of England or the King of Portugal or the King of Holland. They were all dancing with the church being that part of the power structure that dealt with the lords and the kings. And then you had the rest of these folk who was simply their minions. Now, what happens is you come to America, you say all men are created equal. They didn't include us. But now you're saying that each individual is important and government should be for the people. But then when they get in power, They use the evangelical church, which is 100 million people who claim to be conservatives, and then they operate outside of Christian principle, and it's all about power and money. So at the end of the day, every time you do something for somebody that is an act of generosity based on the fact that you have achieved so much financially from the same people, they want to call it socialism. Well, Jesus was a socialist because he took and blessed people who were not as well off as others. And he told the rich man, he said, if you want to get anywhere close to heaven, you ought to take what you have, give it to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. He didn't take anything from him. He just said, here's how you transpose your earthly wealth into heavenly wealth. But what these guys are doing is they are sucking up the government, seeking power, and before you know it, you will be persecuted, prosecuted for believing something that the church as a whole does not believe. And then you'll be in trouble. It's a problem. They claim to be Christian, but they're in the business of church, not in the reality of the Christian principles.
Before we go to the chat, I know I've invited a number of people on this call, and a number of people will be on YouTube and Facebook who have mental and physical challenges. And I want to make sure, I don't know how your time is before we get off,
Calling for me.
that you offer prayer for some of these people. Are there any questions in the chat, Dr. Neighbor-Stevens?
I don't see any at this time.
Okay. Do you have any? Go ahead, Bishop.
Father, we come in Jesus' name. We thank you for this session. We thank you for the forward thinking of our leader. We thank you for Dr. Maxey. We thank you for these lovely people on his staff and team. And we pray now, Lord, for everyone who is on, that you will guide them and direct them, that you will teach and show us and them that you are the God of psychological therapy. You are the God of medical therapy and science. You are the God of everything that deals from a scientific, philosophical, psychological, medical, financial. You have principles that govern all these things. Teach us to find help where you have placed it and go with us so that we might be made better. And I speak it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, Bishop. I know you're down at a celebration with TD Jakes and Tet in Dallas.
Yes.
So
I spoke to them, and they're going to cut the cake now. And I broke away to be with you. So I'm going to run that way now.
okay,
I love you.
Don't eat too much cake.
No, because my A1C is 6.2.
It needs to be a little bit lower. Thank you.
God bless. I love you.
Thank you, sir. So Dr. Neighbor-Stevens and Dr. Hines and our other people, how do we continue to advise our people about science as well as prayer and faith? Dr. Neighbor?
One of the things that certainly create a barrier is when people refuse to honestly engage in a conversation with you. Now, what do I mean when I say honestly engage? They converse with you, but they have a mind that is made up and they are absolutely determined not to entertain or accept any challenge to whatever the rubric they have in their mind. And when someone is taking that position, it is, I don't think, possible to crack through because they are being irrational, and you cannot overcome the irrational with reason. People can agree with that or disagree with that, but I just have not seen that dynamic be very successful, where reason prevails over irrational. But if you have someone who is at least willing to listen, they don't have to agree, they don't have to accept, but at least listen, you can begin to have that conversation where you perhaps can share with them ideas that may be more beneficial for them than some of the ideas that they've been entertaining. I guess why I'm focused on this is I am just waiting to see how many and how soon of the people, and I know we're not supposed to be political, and I'm not espousing any particular party, so this is, I think, within our guidelines. But I am really interested to see how long and who and how many of people who have swallowed the Trump Kool-Aid all these years, how they are able to dismiss what has and what will come out over the next few months in terms of his actions. If this truth as it is presented, and I'm going to say not true, if the facts that are presented do not make anyone question what's been going on and what may be the plan for the future, I don't know what it takes. I just don't get it.
Yeah. As Dr. Hines speaks, I want to unmute Dr. Rhonda Johnson and Dr. Carolyn Teague and others who I'd like to hear from that are online. Dr. Hines, what are your thoughts?
Just to continue off what Dr. Neighbor Stevens was saying, I think sometimes I agree with you that it's hard to have a rational and irrational, to have a discourse that actually moves the needle. But I think sometimes people are not necessarily intentionally not being wholly truthful or participating in the conversation. And what I mean by that is sometimes, especially in the context of medical things, they aren't able to confront their fear, right? They're not able to accept the space that says, I'm mad or angry that I am in this spot or in this place, so I can only, or I'm confused myself, right? Like, but I'm trying to follow, I'm trying to do, stay on this path or whatever that I think is the right thing. And because there are times when we can use as we've seen across the span of humanity, right? You can take a verse out of context, right, and use it to justify just about anything you want to, right? Including don't stray, don't look to the left, don't look to the right, stay, keep your eye on the straight path and the straight and narrow path of the Lord, right? But if you think that's where you are, some of this discourse that is logic might be interpreted as questioning, might be interpreted as straying. And so I think there are times when there's willfully you're done and there's nothing for us to talk about. Then there's some folks who they've taken it as far as they can take it for whatever. We all have self-preservation mechanisms, things that our psyche can take in and barriers and walls and that kind of thing. But I think those things also play a part in some of these difficult discussions, especially in the space of health and faith and yeah.
So the bishop brought up a couple of points, and I'm hoping I get comments from Dr. Rhonda Johnson and Dr. Carolyn Teague. The point of using your cognitive ability. The basis of the Christian derivation of religion is the Hebrew religion, where there's a process of Talmudic discussion, which is one of questioning and being able to discourse with God. When you have questions, it's not a matter of putting on blinders. And in that thing, we all have to be able to think and debate within ourselves and with our God what our circumstance is. And I do know that having faith does help healing, but you can't have healing without doing your part. without eating appropriately healthy, not running across the freeway in the middle of traffic. God's not gonna stop a train from hitting you if you stop in the middle of the tracks. So there has to be some combination of natural law along with supernatural law. Is Dr. Rhonda Johnson available? Can you comment, Dr. Johnson, and then Dr. Teague? I wanted to have a discussion. Dr. Johnson, can you unmute her, Simon? I see her, but I can't hear her.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I was late, so I didn't take in the whole context of the presentation. But I do think that there is strong empirical evidence and scientific evidence that faith can contribute to healing. That is, there's a lot of evidence for that, for in cancer in particular. But when it comes down to people's beliefs, belief systems to me are ingrained very early in life, and it is difficult to change people's fundamental beliefs. I really don't try. I found that out with the, vaccine discussion. You can convince some people and some people can't be convinced. They will go to their deathbed and not be convinced. So, there is a whole spectrum of beliefs. And then one thing I always remember, one pastor said to me, you can tell a lie so much that you start to believe the lie. And we saw that in reference to Dr. Barbara's conversation. We saw that as a method, and that is a method of mind control, population-based mind control, to repeat something over and over and over again. And then sometimes people start to believe that. So that's all I have to say on this topic.
Thank you. Psychologist Dr. Carolyn Teague, are you available?
Hello, Randall.
Hello, Dr.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, I think that the most power is held at an emotional level. And in order to get to people, you have to reach them at that level first to get them to move. And I think that is what our former president has been able to do. If he were to change his views on certain things, he would lose part of his base, because what we don't think about is what he is, what's he programmed to feel, what his family is programmed to feel, and then how he can pass that on to others. And so he reaches these people at an emotional level and gets them to believe in him and what he has to say. That's true for anyone. As a classroom teacher, I know that I have to reach my children at an emotional level before I start to teach them academics, because then that opens the brain to other things. So when we look at ministers, the evangelicals, they are reaching their congregation at an emotional level first, and then telling them what they want them to believe, because at that point, their minds are open. Does that make any sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Are there any other I agree with you so much that emotion opens the door to the mind, to program.
Yes, exactly.
Are there any other comments in the chat, Dr. Neighbor-Stephens?
No, there's a chat. I don't know who it is. And I'm not 100% sure what the comment is addressing. It was an agreement with a comment that was made. And I see one hand raised, but I don't know who that is.
Who has
Salvador Del Senor. Yeah, if we could unmute Ms. Salvador Del Senor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, my name is actually Vanilla. I'm actually a nurse practitioner and a Christian, and work with evangelism. And I would just like to say the topic intrigued me a lot because of faith and healing. And I agree with Dr. Teague's We have to meet the patient where they are. And we have to learn not to talk at the patient, but talk with the patient. Because there's a lot of patients that's had negative interactions with other physicians and other healthcare professionals where they've been, told what to do, not why to do it, how to do it. And then we have to be careful about medications. If you have a patient that's on 10 different medications, they can be very confused, especially if they're the same color, same size. They might not even know what they're taking. If we don't take the time with them to have a positive outcome, then we can expect to have a negative outcome. As far as faith is concerned, personally, I have worn a cross for personal reasons, but I find that Christian patients, they recognize what the symbol is. Some of them have even asked for prayer when they see that I'm wearing a cross. And I have been able to do that with them, to pray with them. I know it has to come with a comfort level. Not everybody is comfortable to praying with other people, but because this topic is faith and healing, then as Christians, that's something, Christian healthcare providers, that's something that we may want to integrate in order to have more of a holistic healthcare outlook for our patients. And that's what I have to say today.
Well, thank you so much. This is an interesting discussion. I know that there are friends of mine who are in the San Diego area who have some health challenges. There are some people in the Los Angeles area and New York and other places. We all have challenges of health. But we all know that God is in charge. And I like what Dr. Teague said, that you have to reach people emotionally first. And anybody who would like to make a further comment amongst our lay people and amongst our physicians and professionals, we're all a group here. You don't have to be ordained. You don't have to be a pastor or a rabbi. I have a friend on here who used to be an AME Zion when he was a child. And he now lives in New Hampshire or Vermont. Would you care to have a word? Are we able to unmute?
Let's see.
Hello, doctor. Can we unmute Dr. Steiner?
Okay, sorry about that little glitch there. Good afternoon, Dr. Maxey. Well, me and Barbara were talking earlier today about this very subject that we're all speaking to. And there's definitely a large correlation between having faith and getting better outcomes, because we know that the mind can affect a lot of hormones and things like that from the brain. And there are studies out of Oral Roberts and others that have proven this. But addressing some of the other questions that you had today, as far as politically, I don't want to get too political, but, Barbara mentions it in relation to how we look at religion and how we're accepting faith and how we're accepting directives in medical care. And it's been a big problem and continues to be a big problem when you have people that seem somewhat irrational and not accepting facts, both, facts in and outside medical. So it seems like all authority, no matter who it is, the FDA, your physician, all, is now being questioned like never before and distrusted. And so there's a sense of distrust even when people are presented with clear facts in front of them. And I'm not sure what the prescription is to get out of this mess in both healthcare and otherwise, and to instill more confidence and trust in people. And I think it's It's profound in the Black community, as we've seen by the lack of getting vaccines and the lack of even finding a primary care physician, et cetera. And but it's widespread, everywhere. So these are universal problems now for America, especially. And how do we instill faith again? Not only religious faith. If you go into any church today, you will see the Sunday schools empty. You will see the pews empty, except for the most part, for the holiday season. And people are walking away. And maybe we have to look back at ourselves and say, can we do a better job? And how can we do a better job? And we can do a better job, but people, have to also want a better job to be done. You can do outreach, but if people aren't going to participate, they have distractions or whatever it is. So we know what the problems are. We need better solutions. And I at the end of the day, one of the solutions is follow the money, right? And you see that the money in these large church organizations and all that are anti-vaxxers or what have you, it's all about money. It's all about people control. It's irrational, but yet it gets people locked together like a cult. And at the end of the day, it ends up in more money. So I think we have to relook at that and decide how to incentivize the folks that really have the truth, that really deserve the trust, etc. So that's what I come away with. And it's a really difficult solution until the people who have the money and all can be reached. And that's always been a tough problem.
Thank you. One of the things that, and I agree with you too, Dr. Santa, that the bishop brought up was that we have gotten away from making the truth important.
That's right.
And he used the word veracity.
Mm-hmm.
And veracity needs to be the basis of what we do, the truth of what we believe in, the truth and how we've learned things that can cure and help people. And my mind goes to something called the 1619 Project. But I remember how certain empires destroyed the library at Alexandria in Egypt. Now they're trying to destroy the Library of Knowledge concerning who contributed to the foundation of this country. And recently I've been giving talks on a disease called APLO1 nephropathy, which causes kidney failure in Blacks. But we need to not only seek the truth, but we need to talk the truth and learn the truth. How can we, through our platforms, deal with creating a more truthful environment for the people that we love and care? And we're almost at the top of the hour, but I just want to address that for a short while.
Yeah, we have a great platform, Dr. Maxey. You've created something spectacular. And I've had friends and family that are usually watching when I'm watching. And I send out the emails to others who have joined. And the one thing that we've always done here on BHT is the truth and the facts. And we've stuck to mainstream FDA recommendations, etc. So I think we're doing our good job. How do you get it out there better? We need to address social media. We need to bring in some high profile people. And like anything else, it needs to be advertised. And this comes back to money. Now, could we get grants for money? Well, it used to cost a fortune to even apply for a grant, but today there's ChatGPT and they have all the grant forms, etc. And we need to jump on this and form a group that is willing to put in some time. And I certainly have volunteered in the past to be part of a group to get an effort underway and an organization underway to raise us money so that we can do the mission that we want to do, exactly what you just said. And that's the solution of going forward.
Well, thank you so much. Dr. Hines, Dr. Nabet-Stephens, we're getting close. Got some comments?
So I will say I really appreciated Bishop Jones's points about just a reminder that God is the God of the natural and the supernatural, and essentially, in all the ways that we've discussed today, that we are one being, right? That our spiritual self is a part of our physical self, and they work in alignment together. And then the other major take home was the importance of critical thinking, because to our point about truth and facts, it's that critical learning how to think, especially for all the reasons that Dr. Steiner just pointed out. You've got Chat GPT, you've got AI. It is making it difficult for people to understand and take information in a way that helps them, that makes it clear, or it can be unclear sometimes where the truth actually lies. But the Bible speaks to that too, right? So and Bishop Jones was talking about teaching children about how to think, right? And critical thinking skills is going to be important for all of us as we navigate the spaces going forward.
Before Dr. Neighbor makes her final comments, I'm going to call on our old friend and former chairman of our board, Mr. Carl Brooks, head of the Executive Council. Mr. Brooks, are you in Florida yet? Can you unmute Mr. Carl Brooks, Simon?
Hello there, Randall.
How are you?
We're down in Florida as we speak. We're close to Miami.
Down there with Governor DeSantis.
Yes, and he's my best friend.
Any thoughts on faith and prayer and healing? And I know we're going to pray for your wife and your family as we go forward too.
I thought the message today was beautiful. I thought that there was a lot of good information. There's such a controversy around faith versus medicine, and we've got to mature as a people to better understand it. I think that the feedback from the various mentors on, Barbara Stevens and Jocelyn Thomas, I think the feedback has been excellent, but it's causing me to think in terms of how do we take it to the next level and making sure that our youth and our children and our friends understand the issues and the complexity of all these issues. This is a very, very difficult time. This country is in trouble in a lot of different ways with the racism and the sexism and the focus on all kinds of things. This is a very, very troubling time for all of us right now.
I think Dr. Neighbor Stevens, final comments?
What keeps kind of banging around in my head during this discussion is something that my grandmother used to say to me when I would come up with some issue. And she would say, there's nothing new under the sun. And the older I get, the more I believe it. It's not new what we're dealing with. It's put on a different coat of paint, but it's not new. And I think at the end of the day, we need to understand the fundamental drivers and the fundamental reasons that things are happening. It's not going to be impossible. It probably will be difficult, but it won't be impossible to overcome what we are confronting today if we put our minds to it, or as they used to say, put our shoulder to the stone, and move it forward.
Well, thank you. As my final word, I am going to end with prayer. We found out, at least I found out a few days ago, that the company that we had agreed with to host our website had taken it down. And so we're in the process now. We've contracted with a new company that will have us up a new and better website within the next 2 to 3 weeks. But we've continued our program and will continue. So the fact that our website is temporarily not reachable, it's going to come back better and stronger. It's going to cost us $99 a month, which isn't a big price. but we're going to need contributions to keep this going. And I sure would appreciate people responding to Black Health Trust, which is it support at blackhealthtrust.org? Social at blackhealthtrust.org. And we need your emails, we need your support, and we need your prayers as we put this new website up, and we hope to expand. And some of the suggestions raised by Dr. Steiner, we've also met with a company that's been funded, and they say they're going to help us support our program going forward, but your contributions will help also. So I'd like for those of us who believe in the power of prayer, those of us who believe in the power of faith, those who believe in goodwill towards others, join me. I want to pray for people and people online. I know from San Diego, people in Atlanta, people in New Hampshire, people all over who have faith and believe. We ask God to put his arms, his powerful arms around them to support their life, their well-being, their health, and their progress, and increase their faith and their belief in the Almighty. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. And have a great day, everybody. Happy Sunday.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.